we're seeing. Obviously, the market is just out of control. I mean, it's clearly out of control, like nothing I've ever seen before, including 03, 04, 05. So you've got to be prepared for that. You've got to have some answers to what's going on. I know I've sent out some videos, so there might be some repetition here. But almost every offer that we see is a multiple offer situation. I cannot see any of in the last 8 to 10 weeks that have not been, since the first of the year, that have not been in a multiple offer situation. So you have to look at that from both perspectives, buyer, seller. And honestly, you've got to educate your clients ahead of time, because number one, the feedback that I'm getting is that the buyers are frustrated with the agents, and the sellers then blame the agents, because the sellers think you're pricing your house too low. So you've got to be prepared and explain to them that market value is market value, and that gets you into the multiple offer situation. You can't price to get ahead of it.
If you're not using escalation clauses, I've won like 4 deals because of those.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you can maybe elaborate on that a little bit, I'll let you elaborate on that a little bit and how you do that. But you should definitely tell your buyers, and if they don't believe you, they don't believe you. I mean, but if you don't tell them ahead of time, it's your fault. If you don't educate the buyer and the seller ahead of time, it's really on you as the agent. And then it's what you do with them. Obviously, if you're talking to a buyer and they're in a mortgage situation, and obviously mortgages are near and dear to my heart, but they're at a disadvantage. I mean, last month, 65% of the transactions were cash. I don't know where the cash is coming from, but 65% of the transactions were cash. So you got to, like, as an agent, you've got to assume that you're going up against a cash transaction. You've got to assume it going in, right? And how do you compete with that? So the couple things that I look at, and they work for both sides. Number one, we've talked about it. You can utilize our finance first if you get them pre-approved with us. I know you've been doing that a lot, Kim. Whether they convert or not, I mean, it's no sweat off your back to get us to do it. That is a completely underwritten pre-approval absent the home. So if you're in reality, you got to move these dominoes and move them around. So I'll start with the premise that if you do that, you could then literally go in as a no finance contingency transaction. The only thing you're really having to be concerned with is on the appraisal.
Which I've had
and title, but I mean, you're not going to remove your title. Your title's not going to come into play on the fine. If the title's flawed, you can get out of the contract.
Even if it's cash.
Even if it's cash, right? So, you've got the appraisal. Well, if you're in a finance deal to begin with right now, to win it, you're most likely going over list anyway as a finance deal. Well, how do you solidify that in the mind of the seller? And if I'm representing the seller, what do I got to do to protect their interests, right? Well, what you do is you remove your finance contingency, and the buyer's got to be willing to pay the difference.
You can put a limit on that, the difference too.
But then you lose.
What about the appraisal contingency?
I mean, if it's at, let's say 334 and you put it in at 340 and you cap it with a 6, I mean, if it comes in under list.
Well, my point is,
if it comes in under list.
Doesn't matter. The point is that that if you want, your point's not wrong.
No, I know.
But my point is, if you do that and I'm in a 4 or 5 offer situation, yours is out the door. You can't.
We had to put in there for my buyer that she will bring the difference to the closing if it's going to appraise.
Right. So that's what I'm talking about. How do you put yourself if you're working with a buyer, how do you put yourself on even playing field with everybody else? How do you do it? And what I'm talking about with everybody else is if I'm making the assumption that there's a cash transaction in front of me, I got to be a cash transaction. So how do I do that? Well, I don't know that you could offer it to everybody, but you could do it confidently if they've gone through our Finance First program. You know, if they want to run the risk through somebody else, God bless them for doing it. I'm saying, how do you ensure your peace of mind if you want to do that? They go through Finance First and you remove the finance contingency. What does that mean for your buyer? Well, it means, to Pete's point, if the property comes in at if you're buying it for, if it's listed at 230 and the appraisal and you buy it for 240 and it comes in at 230, well, now you got to come in with $10,000 more than you would have originally, plus whatever your down payment amount was. So if it's $10,000 and you were putting 20% down, you're now coming with $12,000 more. That's what you're doing. Or we got to look at it and say, can we do it with 10% down and things like that, you know, which is the other alternative. But you have no out for the finance contingency, right? And so you just remove that. You just remove your finance contingency. That's all. And if the other agent, I wouldn't put anything more into it other than just going in as a cash transaction. But then you get into you got to make the assumption that, and let me tell you, 50% of the agents is not going to ask for proof of funds, so it wouldn't matter. But if they do ask for proof of funds, then you put in your Finance First approval certificate. That's what you do, and a bank statement that shows you've got the money down. That's what you do. And now and you put a sizable down payment into your escrow account, because now you're showing a good faith effort as a buyer that, hey, yes, I'm using the bank's money, but I'm coming into this like a cash transaction. That's what you're doing, right? As a seller, if you're representing the seller, what do? Well, you do exactly that. You make sure that in the case, like, let's say they come in with a finance contingency, but they're going $20,000 over. Well, you got to make sure within the context of that finance contingency that you line through the appraisal portion of it and initial it, right? And you might put in additional comments. You don't have to, but you could put in additional comments. Buyer agrees to put any amount necessary down in order to waive finance to appraisal contingency, something as simple as that. But make sure you have to at least do the line through on the finance. And if you want to double up with the additional comments, you do it. But just putting in any additional comments and not lining it through the finance, you're putting your seller in jeopardy, because that becomes arguable in the eyes of attorneys. So you're not really removing the finance contingency at that point. So, and then what else would you do? You'd ask for proof of funds. You got to get proof of funds to show that, because look, the longer this goes on, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but the longer this goes on, the longer you're going to be dealing with it, right? And the more you're dealing with it, the more educated those coming into the situation will be. So there are people out there that are going, hey, go in over list, don't take out the finance, don't take out the appraisal contingency and see what happens. And then they're going to try and play the game. You know what I mean? So your position's got to be, you got to educate them on the buyer side why the game's not going to work. And on the seller side, you want to protect your seller from the game, so to speak. And it really is that simple to get competitive, right? And here's why it's not going away, because the mistake out there is that the public thinks this is fueled by COVID, right? A COVID surge into the area. And while it's part of it, it's probably a fractional part of it. This is really fueled by a demographic shift. Okay. I don't know what the generations are, but you've got the 20s and the mid 20 to late 20 somethings and the 30 to 40 somethings coming into the marketplace. It's a huge population. Okay. Back in 04, 05, 06, what fueled that market was move-ups. There were some first-time home buyers with the stupid financing, but there was a lot of move-ups, you know, younger families selling their first home, moving into the bigger house, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now what you've got is, so there was replacement inventory available for sale, right? If Beth is selling her house to buy Jerry's house, well, Beth's house is now available for sale.
What
right?
the fuck are you doing? Where do you want me to go? Where do you want me to go?
How about muting your, hey, Patrick, mute your phone, Pat.
That's funny.
I don't know where they want you to go.
Obviously driving.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone.
That's all right. So you got this demographic shift, and so these people buying houses aren't selling anything in our marketplace. So you got people moving into the marketplace, you got people entering the marketplace, and you got nothing, they're not selling anything. So that creates a supply and demand problem that, from what it appears on paper, is about a 5 to 7 year run for the state of Florida. That's what we're looking at. We had a shortage of inventory, and I know all the, looking, you could get up on the wrong side of the bed, and there's going to be a percentage of media out there that want to tell you rates are coming higher, the market's shifting, we're screwed, economy's going into recession, and all that bullshit. And it's all true.
It's all true.
It's all true. There's a recession coming, rates are going up. It's all true. Here's the deal. It's not going to make a hill of beans different in what we do for a living. Not one iota.
Until supply hits demand.
Till supply hits demand, and it's 7 years. 5 to 7 years. By that time, we're out of the recession because we got a Republican in office again. So that's just a fact. You know, we'll stop printing money and spending it fakely on people that don't really need it, and we'll get control again. And look at this. All this is going to shift anyway in 2 years. So you just got to know what's going on. And if you don't agree with me, that's okay. I don't get offended by the lack of agreement in there. These are just economic facts that bear out. When you've got the Democratic Party in, they spend money, it surges recession, you know, and then they say that the money cures the recession. It's just a cycle. Go back from 1980 forward, and just all you're doing is replaying the news. You could change the storylines, but you're replaying the news. We had the bird flu. Now we got the pandemic. I mean, not saying the pandemic's not real. We don't have to be. There's always these storylines, guys. And seriously, you could sit and watch them over and over and over again. But the facts are, we got to know what impacts our marketplace. And you've got to be willing to have these very difficult conversations with people up front. If you're doing them in the middle of a negotiation, you're probably going to lose the negotiation, and you're probably going to lose the buyer or the seller, because they're not going to believe you and they're going to be PO'd at you. I've often said the comparison in real estate, really in sales, is think of it like a chess game. You got to know 2 or 3 moves ahead. So if you educate your client as to what is going to happen, even if it doesn't happen, no harm, no foul. If it does happen, you're a genius, right? And I know that's a stretch for some of us, especially me. I'm not a genius, but I just talk facts, and I don't care what anybody thinks about the facts. You know, and everybody has their own set of facts, don't get me wrong, right? But if Jerry's my client and I share with him the facts as I believe them to be, and Jerry chooses not to work with me, there's a percentage of us that get all worried and want to be a chameleon for Jerry, right? I go, Jerry, good luck. I got to work with people that understand the market as I see it, so that it's a good fit for both of us. There's always enough business. And look, again, it's not right or wrong, right? What's our 4 personality types, you know? So you got, and it's the same thing. Look, I'm sharing to you what I believe the market data is as we're seeing it. We're getting it from a real estate perspective. We're getting it from a mortgage perspective. I can tell you the information's correct. If you don't believe me, I'm not upset with you. I'll tell you what else I'm not going to do. I'm not going to debate you. Right? And that's what you got to get yourself into, because what I think happens as a realtor, we get in these mindsets where Jerry's my potential client. I've just educated Jerry on all these things that I know are accurate. And now Jerry gives me the counter argument, right? And now I try to think, well, I really want Jerry as a client. So what can I meander down this road to try and win Jerry as a client? And now I'm writing offers that don't get the closing, right? He's telling me what an ass I am for telling him all these facts in his own little way, right? And it's an adversarial relationship. And it just doesn't, it works sometimes, but it doesn't work all the time. And as a business owner, you've got to appeal to stuff that works most of the time, because you're going to spend, if you fight for the guy or the client that doesn't agree with you, you're going to spend 80% of your time on that person, and you're going to be exhausted for the 20%, the other people, the 90% of the people that want to work with you and understand the business as you see it and the facts that are being presented to you, right? So you got to know that part of the marketplace. The second fact that I just kind of want to go over for you is the relationships that you have with the other agents. Okay. So there's two themes to this story, right? The first theme is, from my perspective, I want everybody to treat the other agents with respect, whether you like them or not, right? It's not our position, in my opinion, to be the realtor police for every single occasion, right? But that being said, right, when you get involved in a transaction with another agent, I don't care how nice Best being to Jerry, if they don't work for Remax Elite Realty, okay? If they don't work for Remax Elite Realty, and Jerry's with, Realtech, right? He's an adversary in the transaction. He's supposed to make you think he's not your adversary, but he's working for his client just like you're working for your client. There's some of you in this group that don't understand that. Some of you are the opposite of that and make it very transparent that it's an adversarial relationship, right? I think you got to find that middle ground and understand what it is, accept it for what it is, and manage it accordingly. My job is to convince you my offer is the best offer, explain to you why my client's the best client, and I'm going to get you to closing on time. Period, paragraph. If I've got the seller, you got to convince me that your client's going to get the closing on time, and you're not going to screw with me on finance, on inspections, on any of that stuff. Right? I'm having countless conversations right now with people in our group that want to push back on this. That cannot grasp the concept that a negotiation is confrontation. It doesn't mean that it's mean. It can be professional. It can be polite. It should be professional. It should be polite, but it's confrontation nonetheless. That's what it is. And oh, by the way, you're in huge competition on every offer, on every transaction.
Question, Tony. I had heard recently that it's a liability when you have a buyer and they send a letter with the pictures and the kids and the cute little story of, I want my kids to live in this neighborhood and blah, blah, blah. Is that a liability?
For who?
For, I guess, for the selling agent, for the buyer agent.
I can't see why it would be. If you work on behalf of your client,
Mm-hmm.
okay? The only thing you can't do is breach 475.
Okay.
So if they tell you to do it, I look at them and be like, really? That's me.
Yeah.
You know, you got a better picture, you're not that pretty. I mean, I don't know.
Wait, or the sob story or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it just,
Yeah.
look, if I, like, it might work. Go ahead.
I had
You
a
can't
client who wrote a really sweet letter, sent a picture of her kids and her and sent it, and they took her offer that was like $5,000 less than the highest. offer.
Yeah, it can
They
work.
Connected with her and
And-
wanted her to have the house at that point.
And look, I think that's a great point. This is what, like, it kind of all ties in. You got to try and you got to feel the room, right? You got to figure out, what am I dealing with? Who's will they be receptive? And it's a coin flip, right? It's a
Think outside
coin
the
flip.
box on-
What's
on-
that?
You gotta think outside the box on some of these. It's not
Yeah.
a regular market anymore. So
You gotta remember that you and I, we think completely different about the
We're
multiple
thinking
offer situation.
contractual
But
and
when the sellers
transactional.
get that
Yeah.
letter, because
Yeah.
I could care less what somebody sends me about that, but when the sellers look at that, they get different emotions and so forth, and it's their
Exactly.
decision. So sometimes it makes things easier, why? Because they want us to choose which one's better. Well, they all look the same to me, you know? They do it and they look at it completely different. So throw it out. If they send them, throw it to the seller and let the seller, it may not matter to them. They
Yeah.
care less and they might, but I mean, it just gives you some different things. And it may make it easier because they may take one that's $5,000 less. I mean, I just
Yeah.
had one where the seller's agent asked me to do it. And I'm like, really? All right, well, we'll do it. And they sent a nice little letter and lo and behold, our offer got accepted because of that letter,
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah,
so-
the other thing I would say, that Dean makes a good point there, and I don't even think he realized he made it, you know? You will. Here's the deal. It's not your decision.
right, it's the seller.
There's so many, like, literally, and it seems like the busier you get, the more we do it. We personalize it.
Yeah.
You're not buying the house. You're not selling the house. I hate to be rude, but shut your trap and listen to your client. Hear what they're telling you. And if they're telling you something it's not going to work, share with them. Don't tell them, hey, it's not going to work. Tell them why you think it might be a bad idea and what might be, give them an alternative. You know, if you just say, hey, look, that's a really bad idea, they're probably going to move on, you know? But, you know, like, if they're willing to do it, do it. I mean, there's nothing, but liability wise, I can't see where there's liability. I mean, now if you said,
Fair
if
housing.
you
wrote the letter.
if you wrote the letter and you took the picture, yeah, that's different.
Okay.
But if the consumer's not guided by that, you know. Now, conversely, you wouldn't. The one thing if you go into a liability question, the only thing I could see as a liability is if you send a picture over to your seller, to a seller, you represent the seller, and the seller rejects the offer because of the picture.
Mhm.
You know, if it's a race issue or something like that, they can't make the decision based on the fact that they don't like the people in, you know, that could be a fair housing issue for the seller. But, you know, look, I hate to be a skeptic. I've been doing this 21 years. I've just never seen it. So, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not, you know, I just haven't seen it. You know, I haven't seen that be an issue for us. So, yeah, I mean, these are the things you're confronted with, right? The other thing I will share is the fact that everybody's on edge. You know, all of you, what you're going through right now, you're on edge. I mean, you know, when you know you're going in, there's not enough housing out there, you're working your tail off to write an offer, you know, and you get beat out, and then the buyer's disappointed, you know.
They're turning you into frack.
Well, you got to watch. Look, I mean, no offense, you have, because I don't know what you're referring to there. Well, that person wasn't your client.
No, but they made the complaint.
But who
against-
cares? See, like again, this is what I'm stressing. You control your actions. You control your actions with your client, but don't engage the other side. Don't engage the other side at all. Once you do, now you want to talk about liability. Now you're liable. You start engaging the other side of the equation, you're opening up doors for scrutiny, right? As far as complaints, somebody wants to complain against you, somebody wants to complain against him. Look, Here's what I've told you all. If I haven't said this recently, I know I've said it, right? There's a couple simple rules, right? Number one, you assume nobody else is going to do the job properly, so you do it right. Number two, you don't do things for the other side. You were trying to help the other side out. You opened the door. He tries to help people out all the time. Tell them all the time, you're opening the door, right? We are in a sales industry. Sorry if I offend. We're in a sales industry. And as part of the sales industry, we certainly have to have a customer service mentality, right? A relationship mentality. But there's certain things we can't do. We can't alter a contract because you can't fix stupid. If the other side can't do their job right, my suggestion is move on to another offer. Because if it starts out badly, it's going to go badly the whole time. And you've got an influx of people in this business twofold. Number one, it had no business being in it. They're gold rushers. We've been through this, right? Easy license to get, relatively inexpensive based on the money you can make. And secondly, they have no leadership or management behind them. They have nobody to ask questions to, right? So they do it wrong. But you got to be careful of what you do, right? You got to make sure that you're not, if you want to look at, to me, using your example, right? If you're going to fix the offer, fix it and counter offer it correctly. Don't be coaching them on what to do. Fix the contract the way you want it fixed, put the terms and conditions in the way you want it, and then you send it off for initials. Nothing wrong with that. But when you're collaborating with Jerry on how to fix it,
Right.
Now you got a problem, right?
Lesson learned.
We all do it. I mean, it's not just you. Yours was just an extravagant example of it, right? Based on it. Listen, you get a Keller Williams freaking contract, it's pretty much for sure you got to fix things in it, because they're crazy. But so you got to be careful about that stuff. You know who you're dealing with. You assess the situations and you react accordingly. The other thing I want to be really cautious of, because it can become alive, don't talk crap about the other agents, right? To your client. You want to tell them it's a difficult negotiation. You want to tell them anything like that. Just be careful what you say out loud. And by all means, don't put it in writing. Don't send a text message that says what an ass the other agent is. Don't send an email that says how difficult they are to work with. It's a gray line between truth and disparaging another agent in the public domain, which liability. Know your audience, right? These are the stupid things we're dealing with right now, but it's critical to know, right? And the last thing, I'll go over some stuff. Let's stop there for a minute. Kim, talk about, if you don't mind, the escalation clause, how you're utilizing it, what your verbiage is, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so yeah, so several of them I've gotten lately because with the escalation clause, I put in that I talked to my buyers first, like what is I know the absolute most that you would go. You don't want to come in with the offer this high, but what is the absolute most that you go where it's $1,000 more, you're going to feel sick and would rather walk away from the property. And so they give me their absolute highest amount. So say the property is $250, but they'll go, in their heart, they will go up to $275. I put in the offer for $250, and on the escalation clause that they will go over $1,000 over the highest offer up to $275. So there's been several here lately that I've gotten because of that.
Now, what do you ask
They have
for?
to return the contract that we beat out.
That's what I was just going to ask you.
Yeah, so they have to send us that contract that they beat out. So like even my son, he bought one in Hudson. And I put the escalation clause in there. I think it was 156 listed or something like that. And he was wanting to go up to 165 and he ended up getting it for 163.5 or, something like that because of that escalation clause. And then they sent us the contract that we beat. by that $1,000.
Did the other, so the other one had an escalation as well?
No,
Oh.
none of the other offers had escalation
Are you-
clauses, just ours.
Is there a
And I
form
just
for
did
that or
one
is it?
yesterday,
There is one?
2 days ago, it was 165 listing, they were willing to go up to 168, oh, $3,000. But they got it for 168 because of that escalation clause, there was another offer at 168, and they just decided to accept his 168, so.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What else is everybody seeing out there? I mean, I know I'm talking to people individually. Any questions, any problems, any frustrations that we haven't hit on? These are the things that I've mentioned are the things that are glaring on my end that I'm seeing and having like basically repetitive conversations, the same issue with multiple people. You know what I mean? That's not your fault. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. But is anybody seeing anything or frustrated with anything that I'm not hitting on?
Appraisals, unless I missed that.
Well, in what way? What do you mean by that? Like,
Well, the appraisals show comps and what they can justify. They don't show what the real values are. Real values are what buyers are willing to pay, sellers are willing to sell for. And we're outpacing the comps.
We're outpacing.
Even the cash comps that are out there from a few months ago, if you can find them. I don't know where all these sales are. I mean, maybe there are more sales than I think with this low inventory. But I mean, everybody seems to be busier than we've ever been.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think there's as many sales as what we've done.
well, there's
in the past.
not, well,
Could be wrong.
business is up to
Business
your
is up,
point,
yeah,
but
but-
there's not, if you look at like, a good way to see that and understand what Dean's talking about, and Michelle does this all the time. She'll go in and run zip codes, total inventory, not looking at like, 200 to 300,000 or anything. She'll just go 3, 4, 6, 8, 8.
You could do that.
There's like
Not
70
that
there's like 70 houses for sale,
Yeah.
which is like 33% of what's
Okay,
usual
one
for
with
sale.
Active and pending.
Right.
I've seen like 25% active and 75%
Right.
pending. It's
So it's
enough.
tougher
Yeah.
when you're listening to
Yeah,
determine where
and
do we
it's all
come
happening
in?
so
Do
fast.
you
Well,
have-
so that's a really good point. Let me give you,
Well, can I just?
Yeah, go ahead.
And then I'll let you, so
No,
what
go
I'm
ahead.
doing is, I mean, we're putting an addendum in there, even if there's a mortgage. And we're doing it so the lender doesn't see them, but if I've got the buyer, we'll do, an appraisal, we'll pay more than $5,000 more than the appraisal if it comes in that way, so that they know. Now, they gotta have the money to do it, it's just, if they don't have any money, but there's a couple different ways of doing it, but we're just doing it with a blank addendum and putting it in there, and we're calling it addendum A. When I use my A addendums, they're addendums that the lender's not gonna see. It's something the buyer and seller can all see and can sign, but we're not giving it to the lender, whether or not that's fraudulent, I don't know, but. What doesn't mean, I mean, if it comes back short, the appraiser, they tell us and we
Do
gotta
with
do,
your
but
inspection
you don't wanna
now.
flag an appraisal issue on a contract because then the appraiser's gonna flag it. I mean, I don't want the appraiser to see it, so,
Good point.
well,
we deal with it. If
well,
it's
I
short,
think-
then-
look, and I think, so there's a couple things there. You have to put some limits on some things sometimes depending on how you're doing. So that's the alternative to the no appraisal kind of thing. Talking about appraisals, all right, there's a couple points there that I think are worthy of clarification. Number one, right, the appraisers aren't, the lender's not influenced by what we can't. So say Go Mortgage lender, we have zero, I could give two craps about what the sale price is, right? And secondly, we cannot in any way, shape, or form try and influence an appraiser on value. Can't do it, right? So in the practical world where Dean's saying we don't want the lender to see it, it really doesn't matter. Truthfully, it doesn't matter because we can't influence it. The process of ordering appraisals are you go through an appraisal management company who then shotguns it out to like 3 to 5 appraisers, and the first one that grabs it gets the appraisal. It's random. Dodd-Frank regulation 2008 put that crap into a place, and it stinks for everybody, but it's the reality of it, right? Secondly, an appraiser, no matter what the market, is looking at a reasonable recommendation of statistical value. buyers and sellers sell more on emotional, buyers and sellers transact on emotional value, not statistical value. That's why, you know, the market right now is certainly outpacing statistics on many fronts. So here's a couple things you got to be aware of. And again, I believe worthy of education to your client. First and foremost, properties under contract, they have no implication on an appraisal whatsoever. Can't be considered. Even if a property closed while you are post your contract date, they can't use that. So it has to be sold units prior to your effective date that are considered. Most people don't realize that, and we hear it all the time when appraisals come back, or I hear it when it's not even us. You know, well, this one just closed. This one just closed. Hey, tell you, it doesn't matter.
And don't forget to check the for sale by owners that closed.
That was
If you're giving them to your
Yeah,
appraiser, if you're meeting them there, whatever.
correct.
How do I find out?
You got to go on tax records.
Yeah, your sellers usually know too.
Yeah.
Around you.
And then you got to understand that a cash transaction is not looked at the same as a finance transaction. Just like a short sale is not looked at the same as traditional.
You mean by the appraiser?
Yes, that's the rule. Just like an REO is not looked at the same. So what they're looking for first is proximity and like-kind transaction. So primarily proximity, conventional to conventional, FHA to FHA. Then the first route would be conventional to FHA because they're both financed, lender involved transaction. And then from there it trickles down. Okay. So you get, and then let's just say you're really hell bent on you want to argue with the appraiser. Okay, perfect. Good luck, right? Seriously. So here's where this comes in. How does it work? It's very important. And you got to explain this to your people, right? If it comes up, how does it work? Well, you have to prepare a rebuttal that says, first and foremost, why the comparable being used is no good. Why is that? You can't say mine's better than yours. It's not good enough. You can say if something was missed, you could add that in, but you also got to remember it's an indication of value of the masses. So the only way it's probably ever going to work is, let's say they got one that's really low and you found one that's more on market, and you can rip one out and put that in, like, I'm going to use 250. You know, they had one for 248, 248, and 210. So it pulled it down to like 220 or whatever. But then you found another 248 that was actually a newer sale than the 210 and closer. Right? And you could make that argument that this was an oversight or a miss, right? But you can't say, well, I can just get better comps. It's, you know, it's just not that easy, right? So again, you know, like if you're looking at cash transactions, and how, like if you're going to tax records, it does record that there's a lien holder. So that information's on there too, right? But it's really hard to flip an appraisal. I mean, you know, and then you got to say, okay, what are you really arguing about? You know, are you going to get $2 or $3 grand? You know, I mean, and listen, that process in this marketplace to send a rebuttal and get an appraiser to flip it, you're probably losing 2 weeks of time with probably a 90% fail rate, maybe higher, right? So when you're looking at your comps, you can't just go on the MLS, get the grid, look at it, and be like, oh yeah, these are all good comps. You got to do a little bit deeper dive into what it is. And again, that's not to say that the cash deals aren't influencing the market, but they may take longer to have the impact. And the market's so fluid right now that if you're in a finance transaction, I think you better be preparing yourself for the appraisal not to be at value, and what the buyer's propensity would be to compensate for that. Because certainly I would say that market value currently, probably in my 21 years in this industry, right now market value is probably so far ahead of statistical value that it's not funny. So you can't, if you're not, look, you've got to move with what the reality is. Look, we could have I don't think so, but if something happens, we could have a different conversation next quarter. But right now, that's the conversation you got to be aware of. And if you disagree with me, okay, I'm okay with that. I mean, but you know, this is what we're seeing in mass on whole in as far as what we're dealing with.
And how does that information translate to pricing listings?
Well, I think market value is market value personally.
And then add, because everybody else is.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I think market value is market value.
And we're getting it.
You know, and it's tough on the buyer. The buyer is, this is a seller's market. Make no doubt about it. We are, believe it or not, for the first time in history, right, we're at 100% absorption.
105 in January, 108 in February.
I didn't want to do that because I was going to have to get into that explanation how. Off-market houses are selling. We're actually selling more houses on a monthly basis than are active on the MLS. Never. 21 years, never saw it. Never saw anything close. We're over 100% absorption right now. So from a seller's standpoint, you price your house on market and let the market see where it takes you. From a buyer standpoint, be prepared. If you want to own, you got to play. I mean, frankly, everybody's shopping in Nordstrom's and Neiman Marcus right now when they're looking at houses. That's what it boils down to. That beautiful pair of shoes that you could buy at Dillard's for the same price while you're paying the upcharge in Neiman. That's what you're doing.
Pretty much.
That's what you're doing. I mean, you know, and look, I think you and I had this conversation, right? You got to separate the emotional side of it. There ain't no feeling bad. You didn't do it. I didn't do it. It's market can see that's where I think there's going to be where you could really, there's a position for agents right now to really take advantage of this marketplace. But I would say it's going to wipe out about 25% of them. The emotional agent in this marketplace is going to just either fail miserably or burn out because they just can't deal with the conversation, because it's that personality type that, Jerry, I love you. I want you to be so happy for your family. This is such an exciting time for you. And I'm not saying that disrespectfully to those that function under that. There's 25 to 30% of the agents out there that's how they do business, right? And then there's probably 30% of the agents like Dean and myself that are like, look, dude, you want to buy the freaking house or don't you? I mean, I want you to be happy. My goal is to get you to closing, right? I don't care if you want to come over for dinner. I'm not inviting you. So we're not going down that path. Let's clear that up right now.
My words exactly.
Right? And then there's another 30 to 35% that I think is probably fits into the, I'm going to use a Kim Adams kind of mindset that does forge the relationship, but it's willing to have the business conversation. So you can do both, but you can't not do the one. You can't not be willing to have the business part of this transaction in the transaction. I don't think you should ever be willing to alleviate the business side of it. I think that's where you open yourself up for liability. But it's impossible to do it today if you don't include the business side of it. I cannot in any way, shape, or form regardless of how invested I want to get into Beth as my client, I can change the business side of this environment. Multiple offers, over market price, market value exceeding statistical value. Beth, if you can't deal with that, maybe you need to go rent. Home Partners is a great alternative. Although you're probably not going to be able to buy them because you're probably not going to be willing to go over market value. I don't know. You do a lot of them. I mean, I don't know if they are or not.
As of today, is this the ninth?
Yeah.
You see they're going up to 450 again.
Okay.
Or at 400.
So they're trying to stay in the marketplace. So if you get a client that's really edgy about it, that's the answer. Flip them over to Home
We get rid of
Partners.
them. They come in pretty strong.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, are they,
pretty easy.
but do the seller agents, are they familiar with Home Partners?
Not all of them are.
Are they willing to accept those offers?
Usually it's cash.
Yeah.
Cash?
Closing.
That's what I thought, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're scared of them.
Yeah.
They usually wait till the last minute to respond to the inspection, just so you all know. And if you just say, if you've got the seller and you don't want to do it, they'll usually still buy it.
Talk to you more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're not mixing that into your routine, another example of where you can find houses. So if Beth is apprehensive about the market, well, that's a safety valve for you, right? And then the last point I would make is inspections, right? Guys, these are really as-is houses. These sellers are not going to fix crap. I mean, if you got a roof leak or you got a plumbing leak or you got an electrical problem,
4-point issues.
4-point issues. Yes, they're probably
Probably is a good.
probably going to take care of it. But if you're willing to pay 10 grand over, don't be stupid. Don't let your client be stupid over another 2 grand, or don't you be stupid over 2 grand on a fat commission. Figure out a way to do it. Don't try and go put yourself in the middle of another transaction that you may or may not win, that you may or may not have the same problem on. Use your heads. And again, educate up front. While you're writing that contract, you should be explaining everything that we just talked about as a group. And if you're not doing your job properly, in my opinion. Any thoughts or questions?
Yes, I have a seller who asked me to put in the addendum, if my house doesn't appraise, and the contingency is I will escalate, the buyer will pay the difference.
Yeah, that's what we just talked about. You
Yeah,
cross out the
but
appraisal
I can put
contingency.
it in the contract.
You can put anything you want in the
And
contract.
what, suppose they're getting financing, what would the lender's gonna see that?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, okay.
Just when you want to get proof of funds that they have extra cash,
Yeah, they do, yeah.
you want to make sure you see proof of funds that they have extra cash available. You don't want to
do it
just.
on an FHA,
No, these are,
unless they have the money, but.
Yeah, look, I'll tell everybody in this room now, look, I'm going to flip over. Any other questions on that
I
stuff?
did have a buyer do FHA.
As long as they have the money, I
They
mean,
paid
but.
5,000 over the appraisal, brought it to closing.
Yeah, there's some people go FHA because of bankruptcies or whatever. It's not always necessarily because they don't have.
Yeah, and if they've got 10% down, look at there is a scenario. There's a real business side scenario where a buyer with 10% down, depending on credit score, a good quality buyer might be better off going FHA versus conventional, because the mortgage insurance will not be permanent at that point and the rate will be lower. So you can't make any assumptions on that. What I would say is I would advise you from a real estate standpoint that not to make assumptions on, FHA versus conventional. I'd advise you to get clarity. And look, so this is where I flip over to use your heads. Okay. The purpose of, first of all, go mortgage, finance first, right? If you're not getting that full scale pre-approval, you're making a mistake, right? That's just a mistake on your part in this marketplace. Secondly, there's nothing wrong with, even if on a seller or a buyer, if they have their own pre-approval, that say based on the market conditions, you want that pre-approval verified through Go Mortgage. They're not under any obligation to use us. but we can get clarification for you so that you're not getting BS'd into a bad situation, right? And the third thing is, look, we've got every product under the sun. There's nothing if we say no to a borrower, there's a high likelihood they can't get the money. Over 95% that they can't get the money. We've got everything from down payment assistance to non-QM. I mean, you know, if we don't do it in-house, we have the ability to broker. There's just there's no reason that we can't fill the void on a borrower and get you clarification as to what you're dealing with. And the other recommendation I make, and I know some of you are trying to push people that way, and there's no hard feelings. I'm just giving you the whys, you know. But the fact of the matter is, don't say, hey, call Sydney. They never do, or maybe they do. Say, listen, here's Sydney's information. I'm going to give Sydney your information and have her call you. Just exchange it that way and let us do what we do. And we can get all this information for you. So, you know, the other point I would make, and it was what our guest speaker was going to talk about, we could do it. Some of us did before. We're going to review list reports, which is it's a CRM info database thing that you can use courtesy of Go Mortgage, no charge to you. I know you've used it pretty successfully. But there's a couple things that we've got and Remax got going on that I think you want to take advantage of. You know, the pre-approval, the list reports thing, our mobile app. The reason I push the list reports in our mobile app is we now have the capability on our mobile app that you can print your own, if they get pre-approved with us, you in real time can print your own pre-approval letter. You don't have to call us. So when you're working these negotiations, you just go onto the app and you create your pre-approval letter and print it.
You can so like say they're pre-approved up to like 400 and you want to go in at like 380, you can revise that to the 380 so that you're not giving a 400 pre-approval letter.
Where's this at?
So not to call you 6 times.
Sid,
Exactly, so you don't have to call me 6 times.
so
As much as I love it.
if you do not have the app and you want the app, just let's get with Sydney after the meeting, whether we do it now, we do it in the next day or two, we'll get you lined up.
I think best would probably just be I'll resend an invite to everybody.
There you go.
That way it's all fresh.
But listen, when you're writing offers on a Sunday night at 7:00, which I know some of you are, right? And you want to do that, you know, it's good to know, hey, I've got 400,000 in the bag, but if you only need 360, you can do it right then and there. And again, you're getting yourself in front, right? The list reports thing, look, it's co-branded. They can look at any house on the market, whether it's your listing or not, and get all the school data, you know, shopping data, all that stuff that's prevalent. But more importantly, look, whether it's list reports or any other search engine, like your mobile Remax app, for example, you got to get them off of Zillow. There's no company, we've given Zillow such a head start, right, that there's no company that's ever going to take their place as the starting point on searches. You're not. They blew Realtor.com out of the water. The MLS sold us out to them for a penny. And look, there's agents like Dean and several other in the room that are getting their good leads from Zillow. There's nothing wrong with that. But once you get that lead, you got to block them in. Because if you think that they're not going to, if you don't retrain the brain and get them onto your app or an app that's strictly branded to you, if you don't think they're going to keep using that Zillow app and keep getting solicited by other realtors like Dean or Pete, you're out of your mind. Again, this is a competitive sales environment. There's plenty of leads, but you want to build practices now that sustain this market and any market moving forward. So list reports is a really good, and the other thing that's good about list reports is when they go in and they search, you're notified that they're searching. There's something to be said for that. You know, you're sitting there on a Tuesday afternoon. Kim hasn't talked to Jamie in 2 weeks. He's been ghosting her. You know, how many, you know, we all get ghosted on them, right? He's ghosting her all of a sudden. Then on Tuesday afternoon, Kim's sitting there having a nice cocktail with Alan out riding the motorcycle. And she goes, hey, Jamie's on the app. She's working. I'm going to call Jamie right now. Right? Hey, Jamie, what are you doing? Kim, funny you should ask. I just saw this house on.
stuff.
These
like-
are, yes. Yeah, just pull over, Alan, and pull over one sec, and you've done it, that's why I did that. So, I mean, these are tools, you've got to fine tune your game, and that doesn't mean you gotta be anchored to a desk. You know, there's these tools that we're giving you that employ some level of artificial intelligence at no cost to you, but you gotta retrain. Look, if I'm going to spend the time to win Jerry over, I want Jerry to do business my way. Why do we have 32 agents, not 60? Because I don't want the other 28 to tell me about how good Keller Williams is. Right? I mean, you want to be, you got to, you know what I mean? You got to get them on board as much as you can so that they don't get away. You know, I mean, I give you the perfect, I used a realtor example versus Tony Benton, who I love. She was a great agent, great job. She wore me out so much talking about seminars and parties. And I'm like, dude, this is RE/MAX. We're here to sell houses. You know, I mean, you want to, I don't really, look, no offense, but I'd like to know your grandkids are okay, but not every day. You know, I mean, we got to sell houses, you know? So, I mean, it's the same thing. Jerry's so trained to go to Zillow. I'm going to Zillow. Kim, I saw this one on Zillow. Kim, I saw this one on Zillow. Kim, I saw this one on Zillow. God damn it, Jerry, get on my app, please. I'll know what you're looking at. You don't even have to call me. You know, so you got to. Yeah, right. Zillow's not always, you know, it's just like the internet. It's not always right.
Yeah, I always say Zillow's the most inaccurate.
It is inaccurate. So if you
see
can,
something inaccurate posted or something, this is why you don't use Zillow and show something.
Yeah.
Mobile home is like, they say it's worth $250,000 or something.
because
Every
it,
once in a while, you know, you see those.
because here's why, like, why is this so important, both for your peace of mind and for production? You know, look, there's a percentage of people that you're going to get right away, right? But there's a pretty big percentage of people that are nurture, right? They're nurture. Well, you got to have a way that you're engaging them pretty repetitiously without it being you engaging them repetitiously. Because if he's on Zillow and you're not meeting the standard of excellence that he wants for nurture, all of a sudden Beth's listings come up. Boy, I was working with an agent, but I haven't heard from her. But I've sent you 50 emails, Jerry. Oh, don't you know you're in my spam folder? I got tired of reading your emails, you know? So I really encourage you to find a way. Again, list reports is a good way. If your own RE/MAX mobile app's another good way. If you're the first one to put them in to the RE/MAX to Lead Street, which if you're not doing with all your leads, even if you're not using it as your CRM, it's a big fat mistake, because if you put them into Lead Street, at least if they go on to RE/MAX.com, you get notified if you're the owner of that lead, right? If you have not, and I'm not going to spend the time to do it today, but if you have not learned Megaphone, well, I was talking about Megaphone a year ago, you know, and telling you where the advantages were, where now it's even more advantageous because they just they merged Design Center and Megaphone, right? Where now, and it's really a good program from a stay in touch kind of situation. And the other one that I think it's a couple $100 for the year. If you've got a database, if you're not using that first app, you're making a huge mistake. For a few $100 a year to let their asses be tracked for you and you be notified when they're doing housing search type activity, which isn't just going to Zillow or isn't just going to Realtor.com, but when you put your database in there, let's just say they went on to, well, the couple of examples that they use, somebody goes on and investigates baby furniture, right? Beth's in my database on First App. Beth's investigating baby furniture. Oh, maybe Beth needs a bigger house. Let me give her a call out of the blue, right? Or, you know, the other example is, you know, just different triggers, furniture purchases, different things that go along with, or, you know, God forbid he's on there on Zillow because Jerry didn't listen to him. He's on Zillow. I find out he was on Zillow. It's a good time to call him. You know, timing is everything, right? And you can't be that in tune with everybody. So that there are these programs out there, both through Go and through RE/MAX, that are there that I don't think you guys are taking advantage of. And why? Because you're busy. Because you're busy. But we're going to wake up one day and we're not going to be busy anymore. I can promise you that. So, best practices are put in place now to maximize your production when it's busy and to ensure your production when it's not busy. And these are a couple really simple things at your disposal that are either free or completely inexpensive that you can take advantage of. I'll send out things. I'll get with Dustin to make sure we focus on these things over the next couple of weeks for those that are interested. But these are the things you want. I know there was some confusion last week. Like we're launching a new CRM, a mortgage-driven CRM. I'm going to use it for both real estate and mortgage, though, me personally. That has some really cool tools on it. It's not a full-blown Booge CRM. Very simplistic in nature, but the ability to mass text, the ability to mass voicemail, the ability, and to segment out different groups, so I can mass text a meeting info. I can mass text, hey, watch that video. There's pertinent information on it. I can mass text a rate alert. But it has the ability to mass text, mass email, and mass video. Very simply. If you're not using video, you're making a mistake. You need to get video into your game so that you cannot be all one thing. You got to kind of mix it up. That's the strategies, right? So there was a wrong phone number the system randomly put a phone number in, but in the future it'll be a 727 number. And if you respond, we get notified. So these things are coming out. I'm kind of the guinea pig on them. If they work, I'll bring them to your attention. And if you want to use them for different purposes, you can. But I mean, for your databases, the ability to mass text, mass broadcast a message, I think is a very good tool to have. If you see that, then I'll bring it to your attention. If it all checks out, it's a pretty new company. It's a pretty new CRM, but they've been pretty open to the design changes.
That's your Go Mortgage related product, or it's an outsourced product that we can get on our own?
It's going to be it's an outsourced product that Go Mortgage is adapting to, that I'm the guinea pig on, but I'm actually guinea pigging it from I have a separate account for real estate as well. If it were, I'm going to tell you right now, in 21 years, this is all I was looking for. The other thing it gives you the ability to do is, what's that called? The Rotator
Dialer?
The dialer. So in other words, let's just say you want to pull up all your leads from 1022, like the month's leads, and you just want to rapid dial, right? Pulls their phone number up, you call it, pulls up the next phone number, pulls up the next phone. So it makes you very effective in that way. So again, not like the full-blown like megaphone kind of thing, but an effective tool for time management for an agent, an effective tool for time management for an LO. It's the one missing ingredient that I've seen in all CRMs, So
the dialer gives you basically another office number, and then it puts everything, your text, your email,
everything goes in there.
Spot.
That's one spot.
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
It's there's integration. Yeah, it's integrated into your text and voicemail and all that. So you can sit there, have a text conversation from your desktop, and it records it. That's really helpful in a lot of ways. I mean, I really do think it's really helpful. So I'm gonna announce these winners and birthdays and all that stuff, but I want to break something. So just anniversaries, John Cutramanis, 3 years. John, thank you, welcome, great to have you. And John Everett's here a year, and Patrick Degnan, who gave us his own segment of today.
Is he okay?
He's got a birthday. He's got a birthday this month. So happy birthday, Pat. Our winners last month, listing agent of the month was Dean Ribble, and then it was a clean slate. It was buyer's agent Kim Adams, referral agent Kim Adams, and associate of the month Kim Adams. So congratulations. So not looking, I got to tell you, and we've got great agents. I mean, I mean that from top to bottom, we've got great agents. And I've said this to other agents, what makes us special, I've been in, recruiting, what really makes us special. There's a lot of mom and pops, there's a lot of big companies, but there's not a lot of mid-sized company like ours, that 30 to 50 agent, which is like a really nice sweet spot where you can have relationships with everybody. And it's really cool the level of agents we have because we don't really dictate. I don't care if you do 50 grand a year. I don't care if you do 500 grand a year. And we've got agents that do both. When I say I don't care, we buy into what your business plan is, not what we think you should do. But the other cool thing is, how are people doing it, right? And you got two of our more consistent top producers right here. Dean consistently does it through, buy a lead mentality and servicing his client database. I mean, he's a big spender on Zillow and he kills it. I mean, he just kills it. But guys, gals, he's in the office at 8 o'clock every day, and that phone, excuse me, the phone is in his ear. And if the phone's not in his ear, he's with a customer until 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. That's what he does. And he's very successful at it.
I don't work nights.
But last month, and personally, right, you don't work nights. But last month, Kim, I mean, first of all, one of the biggest months I've ever seen. I think it was 14 transaction sides. I think it was. It might have been 15, but if I'm wrong by one, whatever. But yeah,
Thanks for doing them for February
yeah,
for me.
but 14 transaction sides in a month. But what's cool about the way Kim does it is she does it purely from networking, relationships. I'm not saying she's not spending money on advertising, but she's not buying leads, right? She's out there creating a return on her personality. And again, it's a tale of how two completely different personalities can do really good in this business. And I lock the Deans, the me, the Pete's in that kind of really strictly business sort of man. I can't fake it to be the kind of person that Kim is. I can't. You'd see right through it. It doesn't make me a bad guy. It's just not who I am. But doing it really the relationship building way, networking, going to chamber meetings, sitting out there in those events, and just shaking hands with people, and then using hand sanitizer, I'm sure, for anybody that wants to get there. She's out there doing it that way. So for everybody in the room that says, how the hell do I do this? And you all ask me, how do I do this? There is no silver bullet. You find what your way of, and it's a combination. Some people, Jamie sits there and gets his wife the best job in the Tampa Bay area and takes her referrals. Hey, if you can pull it off, pull it off. I mean, it's all good. No, but you do it a combo. You do a small Zillow buy, you work the referrals from the Lightning, and you do a really nice business. There is no silver bullet. There's none. 21 years, there's not a silver bullet, right? There's no perfect way to do this, right? But you find what works for you, and it could be one or the other, or in most cases, it's a nice little combo of how you want to do it, right? There's no right or wrong. There's not a right answer or wrong answer. Just, you got to wing it, and you got to put yourself, look at, if you go back to the fact, and I know again that this will make some people uncomfortable. This is a sales industry, okay? Being a realtor is an organization that you must join to have access to the MLS. But being a realtor isn't anything more than being a member of an organization. You're salespeople. You're salespeople that sell real estate for a living. Sydney, much to her chagrin, is a salesperson now that sells money for a living. That's what we do, right? So, in sales, you got to find what your communication method is. You got to be willing to have those hard conversations. You got to be educated on what's taking place at any one time. And then probably the biggest thing you got to be willing to do is fail. Because the best salesperson operates at somewhere around a 30 to 35% success ratio. That's a 65 to 70% fail rate. That's what it is. Not everybody you shake hands with is going to like you. It's exactly right. 300 hitter in baseball is making about 15 mil a year, right? So, you just can't take I would recommend this, especially in this market. Don't get too high on the highs and don't get too low on the lows. Just move forward. Find your next opportunity, right? And take your shot. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, analyze it, evolve what you want to evolve, and move forward. You're not going to win them all. You're not going to make everybody happy. At the end of the look at, and again, not to offend, I know the goal is to make everybody happy. I get it. I get it. Trust me, I get it. Please. But at the end of the day, if you get paid, who gives a shit? And here's what I mean. If you're willing to hold yourself accountable, right? There's a lot of agents out there that don't. I'm not suggesting that. But if you're willing to hold yourself accountable to a standard of excellence, our mission statement, set the highest standard, accept only the best results, do it with communication, cooperation, collaboration. If you do that every single time, and the customer's not happy with you, it might not be you. That's my point. That's my point. Not to be an idiot salesperson like some of them are out there, but if you set a high standard of excellence, more times than not, if you set a high standard of excellence, if you communicate and if you educate, more times than not, they're going to be happy with you. And if they're not, it might not be you. Right?
May I say something?
Yeah.
Because I had a transaction last month. I love the people from England. I sold it 2015. I sold 05. I sold the house. I thought I was doing everything great. The only thing I missed up on is the period when we closed and they didn't get their money at their Bank of America. They're in England. This happened a week ago. They didn't get their money. And I said, the money is at the title company. They just didn't get it. Then they wrote me an email. Eleanor, we were very pleased. I said, God, I showed your house 41 times. It sold for $900,000. And I said, it has to go through the process of delivering it by wire to the title company and Federal Reserve, and you're going to get it that day. She was calling me from England every hour on the hour. Eleanor, it's not in the bank yet. It's not in the bank yet. I said, it had to go through the wiring. Eleanor, we hired you to take care of us. I never got such a, and they're friends. They've been friends, my husband and I, for a long time. So I called Diana and said, I didn't know that after we closed here, she had 3 other closings. And she didn't go back to the office to wire the funds. And they were livid.
Well, I'd say a couple things about that, just in general. Number one, and this goes back to where I caution all of you, is to do your jobs and don't do more than what your job is in the scope of a transaction. Because if the customer's putting that much of the transaction on you, right, then you've given them reason to think that you're more important in the transaction than you are. That's a hard, cold reality. You have no control. Your job is to get them the closing on time. You have zero control. Doesn't matter how many closings on any title company. There's no title company out there that can assure you on any given day that there's not going to be a delay between the time of closing, if the money's got to get wired, that wire is executed, and then how long that wire takes. The bottom line is, did you close on time? Is the money in the bank, and is it coming? That's a win. And that
5
goes
hours later.
But that's a win. But that's
Because you got to remember too that people were getting a mortgage. So some banks, some mortgage companies wire their money right away. Some require a funding number. Some, So I would always tell the people, listen, within 24 hours of closing, you will have your money in the bank.
She was going to call the police.
let her call them. But again, here's the deal. You can't, again, and you said something else in there that it's really important, I think.
If you want to check at closing, then come to the closing.
Get your ass on a plane and they'll hand you a check.
Well, they were in England.
Whatever.
Yeah, get on a plane.
I understand, but
They got airplanes.
People are so.
The other thing I would share, right, because you mentioned it, right, when you're in the middle of a business transaction, they're not your friend. They could be your friend, right after closing and you go to dinner, But you've got, when they're not they're trusting you because of a relationship. But you can't, there's no luxury in you being a friend. As a matter of fact, I think there's a higher level of scrutiny when somebody's relying on it. I don't want anybody to choose to do business with me because I'm their friend. Matter of fact, if that's the only reason you're doing business with me, go somewhere else, because it's not going to end well. And it never did over the course of 21 years. People that just chose us because we were friends never ended well, even on the best of jobs. What was your point, Kim?
Oh, I was gonna bring up something totally different.
Oh, yeah.
If there's an opportunity in the B&I that my husband's in, if anybody's looking for it, they asked me to apply. It's Wednesday mornings. I've already got a networking group on Wednesday mornings, and I'm not giving up because it works really well for me. But these spots hardly ever come open. Usually the realtor stays in them. It's seat specific. It's Wednesday mornings. If anybody's interested, I can let you know and send you the invite from my husband. So,
And where is it?
it meets, right now they're just meeting by Zoom, and they probably will for a long time. But they are Wednesday mornings, 7:30 to 9.
And what is it?
Zoom.
What is it?
B&I, it's a seat-specific business network. They pass tons of referrals to each other. So they want an agent in there that gives a lot of referrals and stuff. You can get a lot of business from it. I would apply if I wasn't already in a Wednesday morning group, but yeah.
Yeah, because the one thing with BNI is you got to be willing to be there. They don't
Yeah, you
take
gotta be
kindly.
there.
They do not take kindly to you missing meetings. As a matter of fact, it's not. There's a very. You want to talk about no wiggle room, right? Am I
So
wrong?
easy on Zoom though.
Yeah. Well, that's where right on Zoom it's easy, but the in-person things can be challenging.
Which chapter?
It's the Palm Harbor chapter.
Palm Harbor.
They're
Okay.
meeting on Wednesday mornings. When they meet in person, it's at CSA. But I don't think there's
Right.
anything in the near future at all. Probably till another year, probably.
Probably. Well.
Anyway, it's a really good opportunity. Just so I throw it
Yeah.
out there. There's already.
No, that's good. Look at when you look at 15 transaction sides. I mean, the results speak for themselves. And like to your point, you would do it, but honestly, for those in the room that don't know, because I have a loose idea. If you don't mind sharing, what's your week schedule like? What's it like? Because I know that you are like you go places. You have a pretty standard schedule that you work, right?
I do, yeah. So, the Wednesday morning is every week a women's networking group that I'm in with like 30 other women, and they throw my name out all over social media and share it with their friends. They're really good referral group for me. But then the Palm Harbor Chamber, the honorary mayor are there, so I go to all their ribbon cuttings and just things that are going on with the chamber. And then they have a week, something every week, at least one meeting every week that I go to. Tarpon Chamber isn't really doing much right now, but I'm on the board at the Tarpon Chamber too, and go to their meetings when they have them. So it's usually once a week too.
And then you do some fairs and stuff, don't you? Like the street fairs.
They're not having them right now in Tarpon. The downtown First Friday I set up there when they're having it. So as soon as they have that, I'll set up at that.
And the other thing I will say, right, and it doesn't apply to most, but the one thing I'll always say, whenever I see you for the most part, you're usually dressed to meet somebody and you always have your name tag on. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the option. I'm not trying to put but I mean, the results are there and that's why I'm using it. Like, and it's Kim is a consistent producer month in, month out, as are a lot of people in this room. But again, I get asked the question, should I buy leads? Should I buy leads? Should I buy leads? And I know there's always a level of concern about the expense on lead purchases, which is a valid concern. If you're not ready to respond to a lead from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m., then don't buy leads. I mean, you got to be willing to do it. But I bring this up today, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but because there is an alternative to that. And it is a regimen. You do it that way too, Eleanor. You build a business over your networking and referrals. And another person that when you say, always ready to meet somebody, that doesn't mean there's not downtime. I'm sure there is. You know, you're on your bike, you post it, you know, you got your jeans on. But when you're out when you're in work mode, you're in work mode. There's just something to be said for that, for everybody to kind of find that little niche in how they maneuver. And then the other part of that is it's consistent. I've watched you now for almost 2 years. It's consistent. It's always nothing changes. If there's not a good month in there, you don't throw your hands up and go, let me do something differently. I'm going to stick with it. And I think that's such a critical part of our business and a part of any sales business. Find your tools, find your methods, and just ride them. Just ride. Don't keep looking to change. Doesn't work. So I'll close with this because it's about the Dunedin location. So I don't quite understand, like, so there's a person that does it on the whole. There's opportunities at Dunedin for walk-ins, right? Michelle's here. She could tell you half the time people are scheduled, they don't show up, or there's nobody there. We average probably one a day. A lot of them are nurture, not now. But there's a small percentage that are now. It's like everything else. Probably 15 to 18, 20% are now, and 80% are nurture. But the other opportunity that I cannot get through my head, and it's hard, but like this one's right there for me. We've talked about it. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, really starting Thursday. It's packed down there. There are so many people, I won't go downtown. Right? Because I'm, what do I call me? Coroni Tony. I'm not a big fan of crowds. This is making me a little uncomfortable, actually. But look, you could sit down in that courtyard with a table, with a balloon, and have conversations all day long.
Sign out in the morning, you get people walking by, hey, what are we selling today?
Oh, he's doing it. Nobody is the farmer's market from 10 till 2, 9 till 2, 9 till 2, right? 9 till 1, something, whatever. 9 to 2, figure. There's people everywhere. And they're walking into the chamber. You don't think that if you were sitting there at the table, you wouldn't have 15, 20, 30 conversations a day about Dunedin and Florida and just be able to, the market's great, selling everything, 100+% absorption rate. You don't think these opportunities would be there? I don't get it. But what I do get is there's 15 transaction sides a month out there. I think Dean's clipping 10 or 12 transaction sides a month this month. I think there's business out there. Do you want to go get it? If you're happy with what you're doing, then don't change it, right? Please understand, I say this with nothing but respect, okay? If you're happy with your results, don't change a thing, right? But if you're looking for more, there's some cheap stuff right under your fingertips that nobody's taking advantage of. That's the point I'm bringing out, right? And it's that simple. It's a numbers game. I like to make it more complicated than that, but I think you and I talk great. If you want the magic numbers, have one real conversation a day with somebody who wants to buy or sell real estate. One real one. Like that they really engage you about current market conditions. So it's not as easy as it sounds. You know, if you go to the gurus, they'll tell you make 100 calls a day so you can have 2 or 3 like that. So understand it's hard. But if somewhere in your day you can have one real conversation a day and then put it into a long-term plan of action, that's 365 contacts a year. All right, real contacts, right? If you do that, first year business, it's at least 90 transactions. If you suck, maybe 60, right? If you're really not working it hard, maybe 60 first year. Second year, you better hire an assistant because you're not going to be able to handle the business. Because remember, now and nurture. If you talk to 365 people this year, minimum 50, 60, 70 year now, well, do the math. That's 290 that are nurture. Well, out of that 290, then 20% of them are now, and then you get your additional nows. All of a sudden, you're starting to clip 100+ transactions a year. And it's Dean's this month, just to be clear, I think he's doing 10 or 12. None of them are coming from Zillow. So, you know, it's nurture, now and nurture. That's what your game's about, right? That's it. Look, I just want to try and get everybody together and make sure that we've got the right data out there for this market to point out just an exceptional exceptional job and a consistent job, Kim. Congratulations. You know, that's a really good job. And just her willingness to share and everybody's willingness to share. That's what makes that's what really makes our organization, I think, different and special. But there's opportunity here. Just what do you want to do with it? You know, we're here to help you. If you're not getting it, you know, we're certainly here to put you, certainly here to share, but not debate. I have my opinions, right? And I think I just want everybody to understand, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm pretty locked into how we do business. And it's not that I'm not open-minded about the alternatives that are out there, but I'm watching a lot of successful people in this organization be very successful. I'm just like one of those guys that goes to the theory, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So I'm not really looking for alternatives to being great, because that's really what we are on the whole. And if you're not getting your share of greatness, learn from what these people are doing. That's why we share it. Use the tools. You know, if you've got a great lender, God bless you. Good luck. Make sure they're giving you something like list reports. Make sure they're giving you a full-scale pre-approval. Make sure they do DPA. If they don't, they might be the nicest person in the world, but you're on the outside looking into this marketplace. If you got a great title company, Lori Mooch, she got a great, she's wonderful. You know, can't argue. But if they don't deliver, we've got one here that subscribes to our theory. And the last thing I will say to you is please understand that any of the, especially like what we've been able to accomplish, you know, with Sydney moving up, Andriana, for those that don't know, came on board last month, doing a great job. She's going to move along rapidly from assistant processor to processor, expert on list reports, all that stuff, right? I mean, for sure, you got it knocked out. So, I mean, you know, she's moving along really quickly. Another asset. I think Alliance does an ample job. Are they perfect? No, they're not. If they're not perfect, if Go Mortgage doesn't deliver for you, if Alliance Title doesn't deliver for you, pick up you call me about everything else. Okay? Seriously. And I don't mind it, right? That's not my point. But if we're not delivering from one of these people that I am solely endorsing with my good name and my reputation, if Michelle lets you down, if they let you down, if Dustin lets you down, you pick up the phone and you call me, and if it has merit, I'll fix it. And if it doesn't have merit, we'll talk why it doesn't. But we'll walk away with a clear understanding, and we'll all stay on the same page, looking for the same goals. Oh, by the way, too, right? And I'll close on this. I don't think you had an office bill first. I think you got everything waived, right? Because of the new bonus program, right? Kim would have, with 14 transaction sides, it was magic. Yeah. Because it's you get the bonus, and because of the way the billing is.
You almost came out of your chair.
No, but she won a free, she won. Yeah, it has to be the next month. I mean,
on the 28th, and I sent your bill out on the 25th, then it's like.
Well, you got to look at it like this. It's you know, like in our world, like, so in the mortgage world, so you should put it like, if we hit a bonus, you get paid, like the bonuses for let's say February, we get paid March 15th. You got to have the month close out. But her efforts in February got her office bill waived for March. That's the bonus, right? Jerry, this is the other part. If you're not familiar with that bonus plan, go get your nose in it and learn. There's money on the table for you. Jerry in January did 2 transaction closings, but got an office bill waived because he had 6 units. He made sure everybody used the mortgage company. Then with somebody that was buying their house used the mortgage company, and the 2 title, the houses that were selling used the title company. 6 units on 2 transactions, no office bill. And we're happy to reward that bonus, right? I mean, the money's out there. I just want to make sure you remember it's there. We didn't put it out there so people wouldn't hit it. We put it out there for you to take advantage of it. But what I find with salespeople is they forget what money's available to them, and then they leave it on the table. And I just don't want that to happen. So anybody got any questions, any comments, any thoughts, anything, Sid, anything that I missed? I think I hit everything that we talked about. Yeah. Appreciate everybody on video. Appreciate you guys listening in. We'll have a tape for those that didn't hear, but hopefully we're a little bit later than I had hoped. I said 11:30. It's 11:50. So perfect.
Close.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Tony.